10-1. That's the claim you've heard 1,000 times. The F-86 Sabre versus the MiG-15 over the skies of Korea. A legendary American victory, a technological masterclass. But what if I told you that number isn't just wrong, it's impossible? Soviet archives tell a different story. Chinese pilot reports paint another picture entirely. And even the U.S. Air Force's own post-war audits quietly walked back those numbers. So what really happened in MiG Alley? Today, we're going to find out. This is the story of how myths are born in wartime, how national pride shapes history, and what the data really says when we strip away the propaganda. Because the truth? It's far more interesting than the legend. November 1950. The Korean War has taken a dramatic turn. UN forces have pushed deep into North Korea, approaching the Chinese border. Then everything changes. Chinese forces cross the Yalu River in overwhelming numbers. And with them comes something unexpected. Swept-wing jet fighters bearing red stars. The MiG-15 has arrived in combat. Within weeks, American B-29 bombers, the same planes that devastated Japan 5 years earlier, are being shot down at alarming rates. Daylight bombing missions over North Korea become suicide runs. Something has to change. The U.S. response is swift. Rush the F-86 Sabre to Korea. By December, the first Sabres arrive. What follows is the world's first large-scale jet-versus-jet air war, fought in a narrow corridor of sky along the Chinese border that pilots come to call MiG Alley. For the next 2.5 years, these two aircraft will clash repeatedly. But even today, we can't agree on what really happened up there. Let's start with what was claimed at the time. The official U.S. Air Force figure, published after the war ended in 1953, was stark. 792 MiG-15s destroyed in air-to-air combat. American losses? Just 78 Sabres. That's a kill ratio of 10-1. American pilots backed this up with compelling first-hand accounts. They described MiG pilots who seemed poorly trained, who broke off engagements prematurely, who made basic tactical errors. The Sabre, they insisted, was simply the superior machine flown by superior men. These weren't empty boasts. These were combat veterans reporting what they saw. For decades, this narrative went unchallenged in the West. It became historical fact, repeated in books, documentaries, and military academies. But then, the Soviet Union collapsed. Archives opened, and researchers found something shocking. Soviet records claimed 1,106 UN aircraft destroyed in air combat, including over 600 Sabres. Meanwhile, they admitted to only 335 MiG-15 losses. That's not a 10-1 ratio in favor of the Sabre. That would be a kill ratio in favor of the MiG. The Chinese records add yet another layer, claiming hundreds of additional victories for their pilots flying MiG-15s. So, which is it? Did the Sabre dominate with a 10-1 advantage? Did the MiG actually win the air war? Or is something else happening here? To understand this battle, we need to understand these machines. And surprisingly, both jets share the same ancestor, Nazi Germany. As World War II ended in 1945, American and Soviet forces raced through Germany, seeking advanced technology. Among the most valuable prizes, swept-wing research data. German engineers had discovered that sweeping wings backward could delay compressibility problems at high speeds, the key to faster jets. The Americans captured these designs and incorporated them into what became the F-86 Sabre. The Soviets also took the German research, and with help from captured engineers, plus a critical assist from Britain, who sold them the Rolls-Royce Nene engine, developed the MiG-15. Two jets, born from the same wartime research, incorporating the same swept-wing breakthrough. But here's what's crucial. They were designed for completely different missions. And that difference explains everything that happened over Korea. The MiG-15 was built for one specific job: kill American bombers before they could drop atomic weapons on Soviet cities. This wasn't theoretical. Soviet planners genuinely expected World War III to begin with waves of B-29s carrying nuclear payloads. So the MiG-15 was designed as a bomber-destroyer. Two 23mm cannons and one massive 37mm cannon. That 37mm fired explosive shells that could tear apart a B-29 with just a few hits. The firepower was devastating. The F-86 Sabre had a different mission: escort bombers and achieve air superiority. It carried 6.50 caliber machine guns, the same reliable weapons American fighters used throughout World War II. High rate of fire proven in dogfights, effective against other fighters. Here's the critical trade-off. The Sabre's .50 cals were perfect for fighter versus fighter combat. Fast firing, easy to aim, lethal against aircraft. The MiG's heavy cannons were devastating against bombers, but had serious limitations in dogfights. Lower rate of fire, heavier recoil, harder to aim during hard maneuvering. Neither design was wrong. They were just optimized for different targets. The problem was, now they had to fight each other. The Sabre had another advantage that's worth understanding: the AN/APG-30 radar-ranging gun sight. This was genuinely revolutionary technology for 1950. Here's how it worked. The radar measured exact range to the target. The gun sight computer factored in airspeed, closure rate, and ballistics, then automatically placed the aiming reticle where you needed to shoot. At 600 miles per hour, where even small aiming errors meant missing completely, this was a game changer. Early MiG-15s had a basic gyroscopic sight, similar to World War II fighters. Soviet pilots estimated lead manually, judged distance by eye. Against a B-29 flying straight and level at constant speed, this worked fine. Against a turning, diving Sabre in a high-speed scissors maneuver, much harder. But the MiG-15 had its own advantages. It could outclimb the Sabre significantly. At high altitudes, above 40,000 feet, it could outturn it. And crucially, it performed better where the bombers actually operated, in the thin air of the stratosphere, where the Sabre's performance fell off. So we have two jets, each with distinct strengths, each designed for different roles, now forced into fighter versus fighter combat. The question isn't which plane was objectively better. The question is, which plane's advantages mattered more in the actual combat that occurred? So how did we get to 10-1? The answer lies in something that has plagued air combat since 1916: overclaiming. Put yourself in the cockpit. You're at 30,000 feet, traveling at 600 miles per hour. Multiple aircraft twisting, turning, diving. You get a MiG in your sights for 3 seconds. You fire. You see strikes. You see smoke. The MiG brakes hard left and dives away trailing vapor. Did you kill it? Severely damage it? Or did you just see normal jet exhaust under certain flight conditions? You'll never know. That MiG disappeared into the clouds over North Korea. You head home. You report a kill. Now multiply this by dozens of pilots in the same engagement. 3 different Sabre pilots might have all hit the same MiG. One damaged aircraft limping home generates 3 confirmed kills in the reports. And remember, this isn't lying. Every pilot genuinely believes they got the kill. It's just the chaos and fog of war. After World War II, the USAF studied this problem extensively using actual loss records. What they found was sobering. Even experienced, honest pilots overclaimed by factors of 2 to 1 or even 3 to 1. In the heat of combat, there's simply no way to be certain. And here's the key point. This problem affected both sides equally. American pilots overclaimed. Soviet pilots overclaimed. Chinese pilots overclaimed. Everyone did, because the nature of air combat makes accurate assessment nearly impossible. But overclaiming alone doesn't explain 10 to 1. For that, we need to talk about Cold War politics. The Korean War was the first direct military clash between American and Soviet technology. Both superpowers had enormous incentive to claim victory, to prove their systems, their training, their entire way of life was superior. For the United States, high kill ratios justified massive defense budgets to Congress and the American public. They demonstrated that investment in advanced technology and pilot training was worthwhile. They reassured NATO allies that Soviet equipment wasn't the invincible threat Soviet propaganda claimed. The 10 to 1 ratio became a powerful political tool. For the Soviet Union, the situation was even more complicated. Officially, Soviet pilots weren't even in Korea. They were volunteers. The Soviet Union repeatedly denied direct involvement in the war. How could they publicly admit to losing hundreds of aircraft in a conflict they officially weren't fighting? Politically impossible. And there's a practical factor that made exaggeration easy: lack of verification. When you shoot down an enemy plane over enemy territory, you cannot inspect the wreckage. You cannot confirm the kill independently. You rely entirely on pilot reports and gun camera footage, both of which, as we've established, are unreliable. The result was predictable. Both sides inflated their claims, and neither side could definitively disprove the other's numbers. Not until decades later, when archives opened. So, what's the truth? After decades of research, cross-referencing archives from 3 countries, and painstaking analysis by military historians, what do we actually know? The most credible modern estimates put the real kill ratio somewhere between 2 to 1 and 3 to 1 in favor of the F-86 Sabre. Still a significant American advantage. Still a combat success. But nothing remotely like 10 to 1. The best research has been done by historians who matched records from all sides. When a Sabre pilot's name appears on both the American casualty list and in a Soviet victory claim for the same date, you've got a verified kill. When a MiG pilot's name shows up in Soviet loss records and matches an American claim, that's confirmation. It's tedious, time-consuming work. Researchers spent years matching names, dates, locations, and aircraft serial numbers across archives in 3 languages. But slowly, a clearer picture emerged. Current estimates suggest the U.S. Air Force lost between 220 and 250 Sabres in air-to-air combat over Korea. In exchange, they destroyed somewhere between 450 and 650 MiG-15s. The exact numbers are still debated. Archives are incomplete, some records were lost or destroyed, but the ratio is consistently in that 2 to 1 to 3 to 1 range. Not 10 to 1, not even close, but still a meaningful victory for the Sabre. This raises an important question. If it wasn't 10 to 1, why did the Sabre maintain any advantage at all? Several factors combined to give American pilots an edge. First, training. American F-86 pilots generally had far more flying hours before entering combat. Many were World War II veterans with extensive combat experience. They'd been in dogfights before, knew how to manage fear and make decisions under pressure. Soviet pilots were often younger, with less training, sometimes rushed to the front to meet urgent needs. Chinese pilots had even less experience on average. Second, tactics. American pilots fought in coordinated formations, used effective radio communication, and employed battle-tested tactical doctrines. The famous Fluid 4 formation gave them flexibility and mutual support. Many Soviet and Chinese pilots were flying their first combat missions against an enemy who'd refined their tactics over years of fighting. Third, that radar gun sight. In the swirling chaos of a dogfight, the AN/APG-30 was a genuine force multiplier. It put more rounds on target, which is what air combat ultimately comes down to. Fourth, and this is crucial, geographic factors. MiG Alley was over North Korea and China. When a MiG was damaged, it could limp to a nearby airfield. When a Sabre was damaged 300 miles north of friendly lines, the pilot faced a long, dangerous flight home or ejection over enemy territory. This naturally inflated MiG victory claims. A damaged Sabre that barely made it home might have been counted as a kill by the MiG pilot who damaged it. But none of these factors, not one, adds up to 10-to-1 dominance. They add up to a modest but real advantage, which is exactly what the corrected numbers show. So why does the 10-to-1 myth persist? 3 reasons. First, the official numbers were published first. Once something enters the historical record, it gets cited again and again, each source referencing the last, all tracing back to those 1953 USAF claims. Momentum is hard to stop. Second, Cold War skepticism. When Soviet archives opened in the 1990s, many Western historians dismissed contradictory evidence as propaganda. Even internal Soviet documents never meant for public eyes. Third, and most important, simple stories beat complex truth. 10-to-1 American dominance fits on a headline. Modest advantage from training, technology, and tactics doesn't. But here's the thing, the F-86 Sabre doesn't need mythology to be impressive. It was a genuinely excellent aircraft flown by skilled, courageous pilots who achieved real combat success. A 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 kill ratio against a capable opponent is remarkable. We don't honor those pilots by inflating their achievements. We honor them by telling their story accurately. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the numbers behind the myths, hit subscribe. We're putting together more content that challenges accepted wisdom with careful research and primary sources. Drop a comment below. I genuinely want to hear your thoughts, especially if you disagree or have additional sources. And if you want to dig deeper, I've linked all my sources in the description. Thanks for watching War Discovery.